We continue following the California gubernatorial election. Today, I'll be speaking with Tom Steyer, businessman and philanthropist, now running in that race. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for talking to me.
David, thank you for having me.
I'm very interested in some of the things around your campaign, and then we'll delve into the campaign itself. I saw this picture of you seemingly flying by yourself in coach, and I'm just curious, like, do you not get bothered? Do you not have security concerns? Like, I always, this might be in my cynicism, but I assume when you hear billionaire gubernatorial candidate flying Southwest or whatever, that this would not be your natural activity.
So let me say this, David. It was Southwest.
Okay.
Um, I always fly commercial. I never take private planes because they're so bad from an environmental emissions standpoint.
Okay.
It is absolutely normal. This is not performative. That's how I get around.
Got it.
Southwest actually has done a very good job this year, and I've flown on it quite a bit. And no, I don't, I don't feel threatened or anything. In fact, it's a great way to meet people. You spend a lot of time online, you meet people on the plane. It's a normal part of life for normal people, and I'm kind of a normal guy in many ways. I know that people think of me as this rich guy, but I think of myself as somebody who started without, who never inherited money, who built a business, who's with his wife is giving it away. And in the meantime, I'm trying to, lead a fun, normal life as much as I can, knowing that, of course, I have, a lot of privilege. But the truth is, I fly commercial, and Southwest is one of the ones that actually we use a lot.
I'm very interested in the self-financing of your campaign. One of the things that Donald Trump started to say when he came down the escalator, as he describes it back in 2015, is I have so much money, I have no reason to be convinced to do anything for money. And that is going to, in some way, insulate me from corruption. And it turned out that it was totally bogus. And in fact, his net worth is
Like
up to
everything he said was a complete
it was
lie.
bogus. His net worth is up $2 billion just during the second term. And just about everything he's done has been for either self-enrichment or the enrichment of his friends and family and others. So have we sort of, can we disabuse ourselves of this notion that just because some people have a lot of money, they're not corruptible? Like, that doesn't seem like a good argument anymore. Would you agree?
I do agree with that point. And let me say this, David. I have been very dismayed at how many business people have given into and accommodated Donald Trump, have basically played up to him, flattered him, bribed him in multiple ways in order to aggrandize themselves.
Yeah.
And at a time when Donald Trump is overtly not just corrupt, but also overtly trying to corrupt and destroy our democracy, is clearly doing things that are bad for the people of the United States of America. The idea that business people are sort of uncorruptible, I think we've seen the exact opposite, if you don't mind my saying so.
One of the things that has been interesting in this race is that we spoke with your opponent, Javier Becerra, and he's taking some heat because he was for single payer for a long time. And now he's being accused of no longer being for it. He disputes that, but it's a subject of contention. You have a different situation where for a long time you were critical of the idea of single payer. You said Bernie's plan is not realistic. Now you've also changed your perspective and you say, no, single payer is the path forward. Can tell us about that.
I think
what has
that's a
practically
very
changed about the
well,
plan?
David, let me say what happened with Javier was he was overtly for single payer. He went into a meeting with the largest lobbying group against single payer. The head of that lobbying group came out and said he very clearly indicated that he was not going to pursue single payer. And that group, which is strongly anti-single payer, then endorsed him and gave him the maximum amount of money
Right.
allowed
Now
by law.
people can check out the interview with him. He disputes that, but
I
there's
know
no
that.
question. Yes.
I've
Okay,
stood on the
good. Just so
stage.
we're all on the
I'm
same page.
just saying that that group said he very clearly said he was against it, and
Yeah,
their actions imply that they absolutely believed that.
got it.
What I did was this. I believed for a long time, falsely now, I believe, that American competition in business could bend the curve on healthcare. We've seen healthcare escalate at twice the rate of inflation for 50 years or more, and it's eating up budgets. And I knew that, but because I was still trusting in the ability of American business to compete and drive down costs, I thought that is the way we'll actually get this rising cost curve that is eating up everybody,
Hmm.
families, businesses, and our state budget under control. And after a while, it's sort of, the old saying, who are you going to believe, me or your own lying eyes? It's kind of like at some point you look at the numbers and you go like, okay, I don't believe you anymore. You're telling me you're going to drive this down. And you told me that 2 years ago, and you told me that 4 years ago, and you told me that 7 years ago. And we haven't seen one instance of that. And you're still singing the same tune, and I'm not seeing it. And that's why I changed. I looked at the facts and I went public and just said, look, I believed something that was going to happen. And I've waited to see and waited to see and waited to see it's not happening. We have to do something about it because it's at a crisis level. And that's why I changed.
Sometimes I wonder whether in gubernatorial races, the single payer question is a bit of a red herring in this sense. I agree that healthcare is one of the most important aspects to the daily lives of Americans. I'm in favor of a system that covers everybody, no disputes there. But I question whether it's doable at the state level. And the reason I question it is some of the states that have done it best for what's been possible have been like, for example, the state I grew up in, Massachusetts, with Romney Care, which was an early version of what Obamacare ultimately was. It's not perfect, but it's the most that was possible at one point in time. Vermont tried to do state single payer, 650,000 people, not a huge population. Maybe in fact, that's part of the problem. We could talk about that. They weren't able to even implement it. And so I wonder, is the healthcare question a real policy question the governor of California will have to contend with? Or is it a way to signal to different constituencies where you're leaning, and maybe it's not going to be something you ultimately actually have power over?
Well, let me say this. It is something the governor of California is absolutely going to have to address.
Okay.
There's no question about that, David. And you can see what's happening right now in the state. When I say that healthcare is chewing up California, it's true. It's basically eating the budget of all the other services in California. You are watching the state legislature reducing the amount of healthcare that is promised to different people. You've seen Donald Trump and HR1 kicking 1 to 3 million Californians off Medi-Cal, which is a hole that's been estimated. I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I believe that the recent May revise of the budget implied that was a $9 billion hole in the budget.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you say, is the governor of California really going to have to deal with it? The answer is absolutely yes.
I
This
guess
is
my question is, will it be dealt with by tweaking what's there versus really having an opportunity to implement single payer?
So there's no doubt that getting to single payer will be a lot of negotiation and work,
Yeah.
and that there are steps that have to succeed that the governor can't just snap his or her fingers and get done. But it's also true that if you look at this, I don't see the other way that we actually control this. And so when you say, this is a lot of brain damage, Tom, I go, yes. And you say, and there's going to be a lot of issues. I say, yes. But the truth is, what we're seeing is healthcare. Look, there are people who are giving up healthcare in the state of California, lots of them,
Yep.
so they can make rent. There are people who are being thrown off their healthcare insurance who are then going to end up in the ER. There are people who are delaying doing anything about their health issues because they can't afford to, which then the issues multiply and the healthcare is much more expensive, but also their health is much worse. So this is a real-time escalating problem that has to be addressed. And when you say, is it really going to be, I don't see the alternative, David.
Hmm.
I really don't. And I think that we're the only industrialized nation in the world that does not provide healthcare to every citizen. we're the only one. And so are we really going to stick with that for some reason? Obviously Trump's bill, HR1, was a drop in tax rates for the richest Americans and the biggest corporations, and he paid for it by kicking the most vulnerable people off Medicaid or Medi-Cal. If you just take a step back and think about how awful that is in a society with great wealth inequality where the corporations are making record profits, that is a choice that is so cynical and so wrong-headed that it's kind of, you know, shocking, even now, a year later, and you think, oh my goodness gracious, that really is your value system. That says everything. And I'm the exact opposite of that. I thought that was absolutely wrong. And I think it's important that healthcare is a right, that we're going to provide it to everybody in California. And we have to do whatever it takes to make that affordable. And this is the way to make that affordable. That's why I'm for single payer.
On the other side of this, we're talking here about something that costs money, but it will also produce savings, of course, by keeping people out of the ER, for example. On the other side are the revenues and wealth taxes, and how to collect money from billionaires has become a big topic. One of the things that my background is economics, and one of the things I've studied and have gone over with a lot of people, including some of your opponents in this race, is that it's very popular to say, we got to tax billionaires. Cool. They mostly don't earn wages. So you can set the income tax rate to whatever you want. You're not going to collect any more money because they're not earning income. Cool. What about we tax capital gains at the same rate as income or at a higher rate? Well, the problem there, as you know, of course, is that's when you are taking gains. If you don't actually sell shares on which you have a gain, you don't have the opportunity to collect those capital gains rates. So then we go, okay, how about a wealth tax? Now, here's my thought on the wealth tax, and I want to hear from you because you might be both governing on this and subject to it. I have no ethical or moral problem with a wealth tax. Seems like a reasonable idea. A lot of the countries in Europe that have done it saw total tax revenue come down, and they abandoned it because people react to the tax and change their behavior. Now, the California 5%, if I understand correctly, is one time and it's retroactive. So leaving the state wouldn't work, at least in theory, because it would go back to your status as of January 1st. Talk me through this. And the real question that I want to get to is, what is the most effective way to actually collect tax revenue from billionaires?
So let me say this. I understand everything you're saying.
Yep.
I have said that if it's on the ballot, I'll vote for it.
Okay.
But that it's a one-time tax to solve an ongoing problem. It doesn't distribute the money in the way that I would go, including the fact that it dramatically underpays or under distributes to the education system, to schools and teachers.
Okay.
And therefore, I can see this as not a long-term solution for this issue.
You'd
And
be okay with it, but it doesn't solve the problem to do it once.
What I've said, look, here are the reasons that I would not design this way.
Okay.
But if it's on the ballot, I would vote for it.
Got it.
But let me say to you, David, take a look at the things that I've done and the things that I am proposing right now.
Okay.
So I ran a proposition to protect the cap and trade revenues in 2010. Oil companies were trying to get rid of it. We beat them 70-30. No one thought we could possibly win. We smashed them. I got a $2 a pack cigarette tax passed in 2016. The legislature couldn't get it passed. The tobacco companies were too strong. We took it to the people. We won. No one had ever been able to do that. In 2012, out-of-state corporations weren't paying a fair income tax in the state of California. We're paying less on their California earnings than California companies.
Yeah.
We said, that's not fair. Let's close that loophole. And we did. Right now, I'm proposing on day one to call a special election and close a corporate real estate tax loophole, where basically corporate real estate is taxed based on valuations from the 1970s. It makes no sense. It's a loophole. It's worth $20 billion to the state of California. Over 5 years, it generates more money than the wealth tax. I'm also talking about something where corporations in California get to decide what locale they earned their money in. And of course, they choose low tax locales,
Yeah.
and that costs the state about $5 billion. In every, in answer to your question, you said your background is in economics. I'm for shared prosperity. I want to make sure we have prosperity. I just think we're in an incredibly rich state that has the highest poverty rate in the United States of America. We have the highest wealth disparity, inequality in the United States, and that's not right. And so I am working on behalf of working people so that the state can provide healthcare as a right, good education system, home care, childcare, the things that will let them live a fair life and drive down housing costs so they can buy a house. These are basic things. And the way that I just described to you 5 things, 3 of which have already passed, that bring billions of dollars every year to the state of California for either education or health that Californians don't pay a penny for.
Those all sound good. The one I want more information about is the tax on cigarettes. Isn't that basically just saying that people addicted to cigarettes, often disproportionately poor people, are going to pay more for their cigarettes? That one I'm less sure about.
Okay, well, let me say this to you, David. The,
Yeah.
the, the thing that happened with it was it dramatically reduced teen smoking.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yes, it is. And so the basic point is I take your point, but the truth is that was an anti-tobacco move.
Mm,
It actually has had a very positive effect on the state of California, which of course has meant the tax revenues go down,
yes.
but it's also very good for the health of the people of this state.
So it sounds like in your principle here is let's capture more revenue from the corporations before it even gets into the pockets of the individual billionaires, and we have to figure out how to get it from them. Is that
Well, I've
fair?
said I wouldn't say that's what I've talked about.
Yeah,
If we're going to do a tax on billionaires, I said I would vote for it.
I gotcha.
I would tax myself. I just want to make sure that when we do it in a way that works for shared prosperity. And so I gave you the examples without going into how I do that if I were designing it,
Yeah,
of things that I have designed. Things I gave you 5 things that I have, either 3 of which have already passed, 2 of which I've talked about, 1 of which I said I'll call the election on a special election on day 1, so that you can understand that when I say shared prosperity, I'm
yeah.
not kidding. I really care that we have prosperity, and I want to design things to make sure of that. And I want to make sure that, in fact, but that this state works for working people, because it's not fair. Working people can't afford to live in this state, David. They can't afford rent. They can't afford health care. They're not getting the school systems that such a rich state you think would absolutely deliver. And they're paying twice as much for electricity, and they're getting gouged at the pump. Somebody has to stand up for working people against the corporate special interests. That's why I'm running for governor. I'm the only person doing it.
I did want to talk a little bit about homelessness. I'm getting a message you've got to run, so maybe we'll save that for another opportunity if we can.
David, I would love to talk again, because obviously you are someone who thinks about economics. Me too.
I love
Like,
that.
I'm a very practical person. I started a business from scratch and built a big business. I went to Stanford Business School. I really care that the state of, I always say to people, I'm on Team California. I want our state to win. I want our state to do really well. But this is not a fair way that this state is being run. And I'm for working people every time, because they're getting screwed by the corporate interests who are absolutely feasting on them.
Tom Steyer, running for governor of California. We're watching the race closely, and I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir, for having me. See you, David.